You're running a shop floor, not a Pinterest interest board or a fantasy football league. You don't need inspiration, you need things to work. So welcome to Build Your Way, a podcast from Cetec ERP. This is a show for manufacturers who are in it every day, from quoting and shipping jobs to troubleshooting quality and material shortages, all while staying a step ahead of what's next. We bring you stories from the field, lessons that stick, and strategies that actually scale to help you build better. Let's get to work.
Welcome, everybody, to the Cetec ERP Build Your Way podcast. My name is Taylor Wagon.
I'm Scott Ryan.
And with us today, we have a very good friend, Chintan Sutaria. Chintan, did I say that correctly?
Yeah, close enough.
Close enough. I'm aware that,
You don't have the Indian accent? Yes, yeah. That's okay. No, it's Chintan Sutaria, but that's you were really close.
That sound is much better when you knew it.
You're as close as
the whitest man on earth can get. Yeah. Did you ever read Cryptonomicon by who's the author there? Oh man,
you're in a niche world.
Specifying the author.
He also wrote Snow Crash and Neil Stephenson. So Cryptonomicon is a book. It's a large fictional book that's in like the nerd canon. Especially in the 90s, those of us who were, in the Linux open source world in the 90s, Cryptonomicon was a must read. These days, people are super into reading Snow Crash because of the VR stuff. Anyway, in Cryptonomicon, you follow like a modern timetable and a World War II timetable when you go through history. It's fun. It's the one book that I would say is probably worth reading of his from a sheer, that's a fun one, great place to start. He makes a comment in there in the modern world about how somebody had come from like Brunei or Malaysia or something, a fictional version, and they were in the West and they went to school, and so they're like with their college buddies, but they're back in this, Southeast Asian world. But he'd been infected with the irony virus of the West. And I remember thinking about like how irony really does hit you like a bit of a virus. It reframes how you see a lot of things, and you can't really undo it once you're in with irony. So with that as our little intro, and that is likely our tone for many of our comments, do you want to give us a little intro about yourself and tell us what your background is? And
sure. So we already covered the pronunciation of my name. I got to meet the Cetec folks because I think it was in 2018, we met in Oregon. So basically my background, I started my career doing some consulting, working for, big four consulting firms, and then moved into EMS business, which I'd grown up around anyway, because it was a family business growing up. So went in full time, helped my dad retire from there, and then started a company called CalcuQuote that does quoting and supply chain software for EMS companies. In 2024, I left CalcuQuote and took some time off, did a bunch of random reading, although didn't read
Cryptonomicon, yeah.
But yeah, just did some general research and, looking for the next big thing. And now I'm working on a new business idea, building a product that has to do with components and part relationships and improving search, and also doing some consulting work, helping businesses with whether it's ERP implementation or leadership changes, things like that.
Okay, I'm gonna do the thing that you're supposed to do before you start a podcast, where you silence your phones, because I'm getting a lot of messages here. With that aside, I kind of want to follow just like a loose timeline. We're going to use, from 2018 till basically today is like the little map of what we're going to talk about. So 2018, we met helping a contract manufacturer in the electronic space. I think they were a wire harness company, go live, right? And that was in lovely, scenic Hood River, Oregon.
That's right. Beautiful place. Place that I keep thinking I want to go back and vacation to because it was so nice.
Great spot for a vacation. Maybe a fine spot for a manufacturing company as well. So with consulting as that like phase one, um, I have like, I was brainstorming, man, there's so many questions and places that we could chase down, things to talk about. But one of them that I wanted to ask is, in your experience as a consultant, where do you think, if I said, hey, you're going to go consult on 10 companies, you're going to move the needle as much as you can, and you're going to take 10% of the value you add. Okay. Okay. So what would you do by odds without knowing what these companies are that you think would add value? This is a fancy way of asking a question of like, okay, what is the average business in this electronics contract manufacturing? Where are they leaving ROI lying around?
So I think there's two parts to this equation, right? One is like, what is their thing? And then one is, and the second thing is like, what can I actually address, right? So selfishly, I'd want to focus on like that combination because, for example, if somebody said, well, I have a problem getting my employees to show up to work on time, I'd be like, yeah, I feel that, but I don't know how to help you with that.
But that's good. It's got to be like something you can actually address meaningfully. So yeah,
exactly. So I'll say like just having seen a bunch of companies in general, it's surprising how many processes don't get revisited after they've been built. And so what happens is you built a process at some point in your history, right? And then something happens, an event happens, and they're like, oh, let's revise the process. And then something else happens, and they're like, oh, let's add to the process. And they keep adding. And so you're there 10 years later, and you're like, oh, we go through these 30 steps every time a sales order, or like a purchase order comes in.
Yeah.
And you're like, why? I understand the first 7 of those, but why the remaining 23? And they're like, and either there's a guy who's been there for the last 10 years who was a part of those conversations, like, oh, well, this and this and this happened, this happened. It's like, well, has that ever happened again, or was it a one-off outlier? And so they've built all this complexity to protect against these like extreme outlier scenarios that there's no way you can capture every outlier anyway. And so they've just built these bloated processes. So if it was me, best ROI per dollar, I would go for, let's just go through every process you have and remove the bloat. Remove all the outliers that you've tried to account for because it's not worth it.
The classic for me on this, the one that I think I run into most, I'm wondering if you'll say the same thing, is when people finish an order, they're like, in Cetec ERP, we make it relatively easy. Whoever's shipping it clicks the create invoice button. That closes the order. It'll set the billing up to happen overnight. We'll automatically email the invoice to the customer, start the AR clock, you're done. And the number of companies that have to be like, oh gosh, we could never do that. What they have to do is they ship it, and then they have a manual process where they tell like a supervisor that it has been shipped.
They print 7 copies of a packing slip.
Yeah,
to hand out to every department manager and accounting.
If you lose one of those 7 copies, God help you, right? But then, somebody else will validate that, yes, you did in fact ship it, and then they will take it up to the front office and put it in like a wire basket for accounting to review, who will then go by detail and review the order they already reviewed.
And then they come back later and ask, how do I know it's shipped?
Oh my gosh. And I'm just like, this is...
You didn't click the ship button.
Yeah, but there will always be an anecdote about how one time Sandy caught an invoice error like 7 years ago. And we just can't allow that to happen.
There's in one of the companies that I'd worked with, they had this process of, when a part comes in, the receipt, like the packing slip of the part that came in, somebody would bring it up to the front where they did the accounting, and then that would go in a pile, and then they'd compare that with POs that were printed out, and they'd compare that with supplier invoices that were printed out. And when all 3 of those matched, they'd staple it together. And I was like, wait, you use an ERP system, right? Doesn't it do the three-way match for you? And they're like, well, yeah, but one time, and it was the same thing. Right? And I was like, so you think a paper process is going to solve this? And they had 2 full-time staff that would do this thing. Right? I'm like,
they save money.
Because they overpaid an invoice one.
Oh man,
And in fact, actually, this is a fun story. What got me, so after I mentioned that I helped my dad retire out of his EMS business. I worked there for a while, helping with the management transition and all of that stuff. And the day that I realized I had to quit is, as I think you guys both know about me, is I like to do change oriented stuff, like implementation type stuff. I don't like making the trains run on time every day. And so I was, one of the new owners of a company comes to me and he's like, "Hey, I want you to start." So the lady in the front office, she validates the incoming customer PO matches the sales order as it was entered, right? So she prints out both and compares them. She's going to staple them together and bring them to your desk every day because she made a mistake once. So you need to validate that she entered it incorrectly or validated it correctly. And I was like, yeah, this is me resigning. So I can't do this anymore.
Massive. Yeah, no, that was
2 steps of checking on top because somewhere one person made a mistake. And yeah, it doesn't make sense.
watchers. Yeah. Okay, so you did that. Once you had your life of consulting, and then you said, "Hey, you." You helped your dad transition out, right? I met you when you were firmly into the CalcuQuote world, right? And what year did you start CalcuQuote?
Yeah, that's like saying when did you and your girlfriend get together? Because I think there was a lot of flirting with the idea before there was a lot of working on the idea, and then there was getting a first customer. So very first spark on it was probably when I was in high school. So I was working for my dad over the summer. That's when the CalcuQuote labor module, basically as it exists right now without some of the modifications, was built. So that was when I was in 11th grade. And then they put it on a shelf, didn't do anything with it for a long time, went back in college. And I was like, "Hey guys, you should do something about this." So that's when they first implemented it. And then when I joined full-time to help my dad retire, the companies that were trying to buy the business were really interested in this way that we were doing quoting, which was basically a souped up Excel file with macros and stuff in it. So that became very interesting to them. And I was like, wait, maybe this is our intellectual property here, which EMS companies don't typically have. So we kind of, reserved it. When the new management took over, I was like, hey, I think we should turn this into a software. And they said, we build hardware, not software, which I appreciate that answer. But they said, if you want to go off and build it, we would probably use that. So that's kind of how it got started. Very first, so the bright line in my mind is when I registered the domain calcuquote.com, which was April 2014. So that's to me, the it became real because it got a name. Fun fact, original name of CalcuQuote before we had decided on a name, our developers came up with it and they called it Quote Star, quote with an asterisk, because it was everything to do with quoting. So the code base, I think, still has mentions of Quote Star in it because of that. So yeah, but 2014, I guess.
So if you kept Quote Star, you could have done the whole thing with just a quote mark and a star.
Yeah.
Could be very, very small, very reduced.
But instead, we made it CalcuQuote, which nobody could pronounce.
That's a lot of letters, but the domain name was surely there. So that's funny. Okay.
So 2014, we registered the domain. First version of the product came out January 1st, 2015 was we got to get the MVP ready. And that was a long runway. And then when I joined full-time was, I know this because basically I was working on another startup at the time, which had nothing to do with manufacturing. It was in ed tech. But I realized I couldn't run 2 startups and be married. Well, my marriage was September 19th, 2016. 2015. And so I got that wrong yesterday too, and that was a mistake. So anyway, 2015. So I decided by September 19th, I had to decide which startup I was going to pursue. And so that's how I became full-time in CalcuQuote.
Wow. Parallel universes somewhere you're in the ed tech space.
Yeah. Teaching people how to take standardized tests better.
Yeah. I might need that. So yeah, I've got some unlocked potential you can help me with. That'll be great. Okay, so then I guess 2018, I met you in Hood River working on the same project at the same time, different companies. You were with Calculate, I was with Cetec ERP. We were helping Bill. And then CalcuQuote, which has like gone all over the place at this point. What are the highlights there? Like what things you are most happy about? This is like a crap question, I realize. Can you reduce that to like three-ish things in CalcuQuote that are like most significant? Obviously, we get for free that it has really helped people on streamlining purchasing and quoting and all of those problems. But there's a bunch of stuff beyond that I think are very interesting that CalcuQuote did and does.
Yeah. Let's see. Man, you narrowed it down to three, and I have to think about it. So I think one is, I think EMS in general is very relationship oriented. And so just getting to meet with, and even now, like I've been out of CalcuQuote for a while, but like being able to keep in touch with people, and like even like yourself included, right? Like everybody's just like, you jive with people and you see each other at events and like that kind of thing. I think that like relationship is a big part of what gets me out of bed every morning, is just being able to like meet people that are cool. And when they're not cool, being able to be like, all right, well, that's the one that you just like push to the side and you focus on the people you like, right? But I really do think there is like a sense of camaraderie in like solving some of these problems for our customers, where like the really cool ones like get in the weeds with you and like give you ideas, and like you can explore ideas together. So I think the relationships is one. Second thing, I'm not shy about saying this. So I left CalcuQuote last year, but and I'm working on something new, but I still miss the team that I had in CalcuQuote, right? Like they were really good people. I look at it now and I'm like, even though I'm sure they would probably say I was a hard ass to be around, but like I look back on it and I'm like, they were so good at what they did that like it really makes me want to be around them. Like I realize like they fueled me a little bit as much as I probably pushed them with that fuel. So I do miss that part of it. And then I think the third thing is that it really, like if I put myself in the shoes of an EMS company, growing up with my dad doing it, and even working in it, like the idea of using APIs to make these like integrated solutions. Like if I had known that I could do this with Cetec 10 years ago, I probably would have been a lot more excited to stay in my dad's business, right? It would have made it less painful and less tedious to do a lot of the operations that I had to do back then. So like hindsight 2020, but I think like the fact that these companies are able to do that, I think it like levels the playing field. So I just got off a call actually right before joining this, and it was a small business, and he was like, hey, like I want to see if I could use some of your time for consulting. I was like, oh, I'm not going to charge you for it. Let's just talk. And he's like, oh, why? I was like, well, because I can charge the big companies and then work with the small companies for free. Because like there's a pleasure in being able to help the small companies be successful. And this was, it's a 7-person EMS business that's super small, and dad and son are working it together. I'm like, yeah, I love that. Like these types of companies are beneficiaries of using technology.
I'm super there. That's very motivational for us.
Will you, in like a 30-second synopsis, just for kind of our listeners, just talk about the CalcuQuote Cetec integration? Because you mentioned the APIs and like that would have kept you at your father's company. So that's probably worth just a small, like, here's the kinds of things that you can solve with technology.
The listening audience that may not know what CalcuQuote does and how it works with Cetec ERP.
Yeah. But okay. Yeah, just very brief.
Are you asking me or Taylor?
You don't want to ask me.
You're the guest.
So one of the main things that we started with was being able to push a bill of material into Cetec, right? So Cetec has what I think is a great part relationship concept with part spec groups. So when we first, when we did the EAI implementation, right? Like it was interesting because we had to figure out a way to make these like AVLs be able to like work together, and realizing from that and like adapting, what we ended up building with the CalcuQuote Cetec integration was you can take an Excel bill of material, which usually specifies AVL relationships, and bring that into Cetec with the part spec group being created and the PRC parts being created and those relationships being mapped together appropriately. That was, in my opinion, like a huge thing, because BOM ingestion is a problem in any ERP system. With Cetec, it was a little bit easier because you guys do have that like screen to be able to do that, but still a step further than that, being able to build the AVL relationships is a really unique thing that Cetec can do. So that was one. The second thing was on the PRC record, being able to pull in supplier API pricing so that you can maintain a price list, which, you know, maybe you're not going to use stale pricing, but at least having some sort of benchmark when you're trying to figure out what the pricing is in the market and how available it is. I was just talking to a customer about lead times, and they set up all their lead times like back in the COVID era, right? So everything is like 12 weeks, 40 weeks, 50 weeks, and they updated it to like more recent times. But really, like a better way of doing it is to say, is this part readily available in the market or not? And then the lead time is like 2 days versus 10 weeks manufacturer's lead time. So that kind of thing, you know, Cetec has the integration into CalcuQuote's pricing API to be able to pull all that information. And then there's the purchasing side of it. So you can get more sophisticated with ShopCQ, where it's sending purchase orders from ShopCQ directly into Cetec. And then you can get even more sophisticated with MSP, which is pulling basically MRP type data from Cetec and overlaying that with supplier inventory to see what is buildable, which kits can be maximizing revenue for like combining kits or like cannibalizing one kit into another. So just maximizing your inventory turns. So there's, I think there's like half a dozen different points where the two systems work together, but it's in my opinion, all of it working together is like, it's like an orchestration that's beautiful, right? Like it makes so many of these manual processes better.
That's my take too. The coolest features that you get with the CalcuQuote Cetec integration is when CalcuQuote is like automatically moving items on a BOM around within acceptable swaps and finding out how you can ship as much as possible, as quickly as possible to take care of your customers. And that stuff is very time intensive for a human. And to have like the system do that for you there's so much ROI to that. And that's like a consulting truism. Nobody counts internal cost. You know, like we'll throw two people at validating a three-way match, even though the system is already going to do it, because, oh, well, that doesn't cost us anything. Yeah, that's two people's salaries. You know, yeah, but we don't pay for that. Yeah, no, you do. We see that time and time again.
Anecdote: I was visiting a customer. I'm on site with this customer, and it's the purchasing manager and the owner of the business. And the purchasing manager saw the demo and he's like, "Oh yeah, this is going to save me several hours a day." And this was back when CalcuQuote cost like $300 a month, right? So this was 2015 or something like that. So he's like, $300 a month is too expensive. Can't afford it. I'm like, you just told me your purchasing manager is going to save several hours every day. I don't understand how you can't afford $300. And his response still gets me. He told me a story and he's like, I have a friend who's a dentist, and a sales guy came to him and said, we can replace your light bulbs with LED bulbs. And you only have to change them once every 7 years, whereas right now you have to change them every two months, right? And the dentist goes, yeah, but my receptionist changes them and I'm still going to need a receptionist. So I might as well change them every 2 months because what else is she going to do? And that's exactly what this guy thought about his purchasing manager. What else is he going to do if we take away a few hours of work for him every day? I can't not pay him. So I was like, I'm sure you could find in your heart something for him to do.
Some value. There has to be some value.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we talk on the anecdotes on like mechanization. You introduce like farm tools and now the average farm is so much more productive, and that's going to put all the farmers out of work. And instead, they went and they made airplanes and iPhones and everything else, and that's what humans do. You unlock productivity, and we do things. We'll see what AI does for us, but that's a separate conversation. Um, you and I had a conversation maybe a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, about how EMS companies are often not, extremely large companies, and how, like, distribution, for example, seems to consolidate really effectively, like the roll-up strategy, and you end up with Arrow, you end up with Avnet, you end up with DigiKey, because some things consolidate really, really well. And EMS companies, maybe because they're contract manufacturers and batch sizes are what they are and relationships are what they are, and then you get so embedded in the knowledge of, your customer base, that there seems to be like an interesting spot there for truly a smaller business than something like making cars or something. What do you think? I, I imagine there's some outliers. There's got to be some EMS companies that are really churning out, motherboards for Mac computers or something like that. And there's always going to be some, that hit that. What do you think is the normal size range of, like, health? You need a minimum amount. You need, then start bumping. What do you see there?
I think it's evolved, right? So I got introduced to EMS back in the 90s when you could literally be like three people with a soldering iron and you're a company, right? And then, like, pick and place picks up steam and you got to invest in it. And then, like, nowadays, like, the minimum threshold is higher because you've got to get, just to, like, open doors, you got to have ISO certification, you got to have a pick and place line, you got to have incoming inspection, like, you got to have all these, like, little things to make it work. So I would say if you're in the less than 10 million space, it's really hard to survive long term in that space, right? Like, you're either growing or you're disappearing at that point. If you're above 10 million, depending on your geography and all of that stuff, and sorry, let me caveat this. This is the US, right? In other countries, it's different. But yeah, in the US, I think if you're less than 10 million, you're either growing or shrinking. And then when you get past the 10 million, I think there's probably like a point, I would say probably near like the 50 million mark, where beyond that, and you start to feel significant pain, sometimes sooner, but like definitely after 50 million, I think you start to feel some pain, because it becomes this thing of like, well, we're too big to act like a small agile business, but we're too small to be to be like a huge powerhouse efficient producer. And there is like this trend of private equity companies that were investing very heavily in the EMS space and trying to do this like consolidation activity. And it's, I don't know, I think the jury is still out on it. My 2 cents is that it's not, the hypothesis that they're making is that if we buy five $50 million businesses, that becomes $250 million revenue, and I can consolidate, things into shared services and like load balance work and all of that stuff, and it'll be more profitable as a result. I don't believe in that hypothesis, and the reason is because of what you said. It's not a manufacturing business; it's a services business when you're at that size. Like, if you are truly a billion-dollar EMS company, then it's a manufacturing business, right? Like, you get an order and it's like, here's the 3-year contract for it, and it's like you're making your money on the efficiency of your operations. But when you're a less than $50 million business, you're making your money off of the service, the customer relationship, and all of that stuff. And so if you start to turn that into, well, here's our process for you to work with us, then customers are gonna be like, cool, let me go find a $50 million business that's actually gonna take things the way I want them to take them.
So, interesting. Okay, well, CalcuQuote, that chapter is now closed for you. You've exited. The company is in stable hands. They're still awesome, and you, I'm sure, took several months to just hang out in a spa and read books. We have talked about how the intention was to do less, and he ended up just immediately filling his time with a million consulting options on the side. But there's a new game in town, and What's the next thing here?
So started work. This idea has been kind of percolating for a long time. So one of the challenges we had in CalcuQuote is that you can add efficiency, significant efficiency, when you have a clean BOM with part numbers and all that stuff, right? But what happens when you don't have a clean BOM, or when you don't have part numbers, or when the part numbers don't match the description, or when the AVL is too limiting, and so on? So that's the problem I set out to solve. So with OpenJar, one of the things that I'm working on now is basically building a crowdsourced parts library. So working with EMS companies, OEMs, distributors, anybody that wants to get better insight into what is the correct part number to use based on the specs, and how do I recommend alternates better? How do I monitor risk in my parts library? All of that stuff. So still in development, still really early stage. My plan is to launch in 2026. So January 2026, you guys are going to see a bunch of me out in the world again. But for now, I've been heads down working on building something. The interesting thing this time around is in CalcuQuote, we had a product and we had to go looking for customers. This time around, I think we've got the customers because the problem is pretty easy to validate. We just have to go build the product. So that's where we're at.
It's interesting how Cetec bingo, garbage in, garbage out, right? You need the actual real data about what parts you have, and then what are the attributes of these parts, and how do we understand what that data is. And it's a very scoped and easy problem if you have 3 parts and a way to find accurate data about it. And when you have 3 million parts, it becomes a very, very difficult problem. So
yeah, well, and a lot of times I don't think people realize the impact that messy parts data has. Everything downstream gets impacted, right? So like if you think about, like, an engineer gives you an Excel file and they've misidentified an attribute or something, right? Well, that affects the quote they get. That quote becomes the BOM for manufacturing. That affects the quality that they see in manufacturing. Like, they're going to have a bunch of RMAs as a result. Like, purchasing is wrong. Everything becomes wrong as a result of like one fat finger of, I needed 60 volt and I typed in 50 volt. Yeah. And all of a sudden everything is messed up.
It ripples as though you'd thrown a rock into a pond.
Very, very philosophical.
Deep. Thank you. Scott, you had a proposed question.
I did. I've got a couple. I think the first one, you mentioned like being a part of change management, and as soon as something is settled, you're out. Change management has, in multiple interviews now, has been presented as like the hardest thing that small manufacturers deal with. It's probably not just true to that industry, but that's the only people we've talked to so far. Similar to Taylor's kind of broad question around, give me top 3. How do you approach it? And granted, it's probably different with every problem that you're solving, or every, you're changing ERP versus changing leadership.
It's going to be a mess either way.
Yeah,
how do you cope with that?
Yeah, how does a company do that well? And do you have like a couple of insider tricks?
How do you help if you showed up? Like, how would you help them?
It's maybe a better way to.
How would you help them? Yeah.
So I don't know that this is a magic bullet, but I find that it works for me. So I'm a big believer in, there should be some sort of clear strategy or vision or something that like is your starting point, right? And when I say strategy, I mean like really clearly defined, like this is where we want to be, this is how we want to get there, this is what we're not going to do, like starting with some sort of like articulation of the overall company picture. From there, I'm a numbers person, so I like to assign some like numbers to it. So say, hey, if we want to grow in I don't know, the medical manufacturing space. Well, then today we're at 12% of our revenue comes from there. We want to get to 30% of our revenue comes from there. Or our margins are 5% right now, and we want to get to 12% margins or something, right? Like enumerate that overall statement somehow. And then the reason I think that that's important is because then it kind of becomes your like the constitution by which everything gets measured, right? So if you say, I have an idea, we should implement X process. And it's like, oh, does that get us to that thing? Justify in that context. And if you can, then we've got a winner here. If you can't justify in that context, then no, we're not doing it right now. And so it focuses the organization's change efforts on things. And really, I think what ends up happening is I don't believe this idea that, people in a company are somehow like ill-willed towards the company, right? I think that generally people want to do a good job. And so what makes people perceive somebody doesn't want to do a good job or isn't doing a good job is because they have a lack of direction. So if you say like you're going to justify things in the context of this overall strategy or along these metrics, then it gives them a way to pitch their ideas and articulate why their ideas are valuable that the leadership can understand. In the absence of that overall picture, they're like, hey, I really think we should get a new SMT machine. And the owner is sitting there thinking, why? Like, you don't understand. I don't have the cash for this. And it's like, but like, this one's going to be faster. Well, one's thinking about production efficiency, the other's thinking about cash flow. And that's why they're not jiving with each other. So from a change management perspective, if you give people those kinds of tools, that can help filter out bad ideas and filter in good ideas. And then because hopefully everybody is agreed on that North Star and why it's good for the business, then everybody's working in the same direction and there isn't as much resistance. It's when that hasn't been articulated that you start to see resistance because somebody thinks operational efficiency is more important than cash flow.
Makes sense. Yeah, that's tracks. Yeah.
I don't think I gave you three things, but that was...
No, but I mean, yeah.
Now, on a more tactical level, I will say, I see this in small businesses all the time, is like there's times to be nice and patient, and there's times to be decisive. And there's times where I want to like scream into a pillow because I'm like, I just wish this person would like take charge and say like, guys, we're done talking about this and we're going to do it.
At work, I'm being nicely decisive.
What was that?
I try to be nicely decisive.
Yeah.
Do you? Shut up.
I've worked with people that work for you, Taylor. I don't know.
Yeah. Those two words and that combination of not ever gone into my...
Yes, I want people to be afraid of how much they love me.
Yeah. Okay. So my second question, that was a great answer. Thank you. My second question, we chatted briefly at lunch a few weeks ago around AI and adoption of AI in really the small manufacturing space. I think that pairs with the change management. Like that's a huge shift.
That's the change on us.
In a paradigm. And I think all three of us are kind of aligned on like where it's not really clear where the ROI truly is. Like costs can be pretty astronomically high. It's difficult when you have a small pool of data, small data lake that you can't readily train. So I'm just curious, like your take on AI adoption. Where do you see value immediately, and then maybe long term? Like how do we start to think about not just taking something on because it's a trendy thing, but that it actually solves,
has value.
Yeah.
So I got to participate in this IPC event a couple weeks ago where it was like an EMS roundtable on AI. And so there was like 10 different companies there and they were all talking about, I mean, there was a presentation aspect to it, but then they were all talking like more generally about how they're using AI, right? And these are generally small businesses. So I'll say like there's the, let's say like enterprise level where it's like, companies like Rockwell and Lockheed that are using AI in their manufacturing for predictive maintenance and all this stuff, right? And I'm like, that's cute, but like not for small businesses, right? Because there's no way a small business is thinking like that sophisticated about that. They're not going to buy all the sensors they need to and all of that stuff. They're just going to they're going to have a guy who's on the line who's like, I know when that machine makes that noise, I need to go do this thing. Right? So, and they're going to keep up with it that way, I think. Prove me wrong in 10 years and maybe I'm wrong. In terms of like software systems, I think that, again, like if you're operating in a lake by yourself, rather than a lake that's connected through a system of rivers and tributaries to other lakes, right? Then like,
Understand a metaphor, but
yeah. If you're in an isolated world, like making sense of your data with AI also like typically doesn't make sense. So you have to kind of join some sort of platform to be able to consolidate that, right? That's why there's all these software companies out there that can do those kinds of things. But I think like the most, I'd say like the easiest to implement use cases right now are getting your people's hands on a ChatGPT or Copilot or something, because so I'll give you an example. Is if I get like terms and conditions attached to a PO or like quality clauses attached to a PO for my customer, right? It's usually like super dense language and links to something else and blah, blah. Well, if I could say, hey, I'm going to attach this into the ChatGPT and tell it like, hey, summarize like what are the things I should care about from this, it will generally point you in the right direction. It's not foolproof, but like I would trust ChatGPT's answer over like a non-qualified person to read that, you know, and so those are the types of use cases that I think become really valuable. Same for, I heard about this use case from an EMS company where they started using ChatGPT to troubleshoot a board. So like when it was failing test, they were basically like interacting through video and through pictures with ChatGPT to troubleshoot like where is the issue. And it was quite effective at it. So there are use cases, but it's not in the automation side. I think it's in the like assisted work side.
Supplementing human process. Yeah.
Now, there is some concerns there of like, do you really want to be attaching the schematics for that board to ChatGPT to troubleshoot it? I don't know. I don't think so. Like that's got to violate some sort of privacy thing. So make sure you build the right infrastructure that keeps that confidential information confidential. But I think there is some like very valuable use cases that are fairly easy to implement.
Huh. Yeah, that's good. We end up using it. I mean, that's not dissimilar to what we do on the software side here, where programmers have used external tools forever. The version prior to the current AI wave is you type in your problem and you get an answer from Stack Overflow and cut and paste the code in and then rewrite it and debug it and go with it. But it saves you a little bit of trouble from, whatever that syntax was that you forgot, some obscure corner case of the code. Now you do that with ChatGPT and it's faster at doing that, but you're still going to have to read it. You're still going to have to debug it. You're still going to have to know exactly what it was you were asking for, but it helps. It's like having a dictionary, or like when we use Wikipedia to remember, when was the Battle of Hastings? And you're like, there's three nerds in the room. They're like, it was in 1066. The rest of them are like, man, I'm just going to look it up on Wikipedia. It's fine. I use this supplementary memory. And you can do that. Now you don't have to remember all these weird syntax things, and you can vibe code your way to not having to care about the syntax, which is great. That's a great tool, but it's still supplementing with like a human driver.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think like to that point, I've seen EMS companies more and more now, they are using this like vibe coding type of philosophy to build integrations. So they're, which is fine. Like for a small company's use case, like, yeah, go build your little script and it does this thing.
It works. Great.
You'll become $100 million company. You probably don't want to rely on that anymore. But yeah, if you're a small business and you say, I want to be able to populate a customer record in my CRM from my ERP or vice versa, like, why not? Save yourself the 2 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. This is a totally off topic question, but I really want to ask it and I want to make sure this one squeezes in here. So we have an office in India, and it is like in Ahmedabad, right? And you obviously have been there many times because you were our initial link to go. But I have never been to India at the same time that you have been there. I've never been to India with you. So here's my India tourist question. Okay, you know I've done like the basic things. Where in India would you put on the like, hey, not your top cities, but the second places that people should go that are a little bit overlooked? People got to do this.
Oh, man, that's a hard one. Okay, so I should say, for the listening audience here, Taylor has probably done more tourism things in India than I have.
I'm gonna judge your answers.
Because I was born there, right? And then whenever I go back, I have family there. So like every time I go, like I can tell you which aunt to go to for the best cooking. Like I don't know that I can.
It's relatives.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know if I'm a great resource for like India tourism stuff. I will say like culturally, right? So like if you want like real India, then I think it is good to like just spend a day with someone. And in India, I think they're very willing to just have you like shadow them for a day or something, right? But like I think that's like the most meaningful thing. Instead of having like getting taken around, just be like, I'm just going to accompany you on whatever you had planned for the day. That's like the most authentic experience you can have, because you get to experience like all the little things that coming from America seem kind of funny, right? But like there are like cultural nuances that you can start to appreciate. So I'm a big like, if I'm going on vacation somewhere, I'd much rather live there for 2 weeks and just like, be there rather than like check off all the tourist destinations. And so, yeah, I would say just like accompany, like live with a family and for like a week or something, and you'll get to experience much more real India than anything. And I think that'll be like a more profound, lasting experience, in my opinion. So
I buy that.
Yeah.
That's funny.
And also like you've been there enough to know like the idea of hospitality, like in America, we say like Southern hospitality, right? Like India takes it on a whole new level. So,
much more of a deal. It's a bit. I asked you the question about like when people say, "Hey, what hotel should I stay at in Austin?" It's like, well, I mean, I could tell you what I've heard, but I've never stayed in a hotel in Austin. Like, I don't know.
I'm the same way, and same with like Ahmedabad. Until like 2 years ago, I'd never stayed in a hotel, and I don't think I'd ever stayed in a hotel in Gujarat, like period, because I always had family around. So. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Good. Yeah. That was amazing. Well, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thanks for kind of walking through the little journey there. And I know I, for one, am excited to see what comes with the Open Jar release in January.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Appreciate it. And for everybody else, thanks for joining us. And until our next episode, continue to build your way.
Like, follow, subscribe on whatever platform you use. And if you want to be a part or have questions you want us to cover, email us podcast@ctecherp.com.
You want to like point down and say, like, smash the like button.
Smash that button. Yeah.
All right. Thank you all.
Yeah. Thanks, Chintan.